full throttle.
Alright, so I'm going to do a video here on the new ORQA DreamX 5-inch Freestyle FPV drone. And this video is going to be primarily about the quad. I'm going to have additional content on the rest of Orca's ecosystem here. So they were very generous and sent me everything, I think. The Orca FPV.One pilot goggles, rapid fire module. They're obviously Ghost. This is the micro module, I believe, GRB module. I did videos on this and this already. I will link them in the video description. I didn't use this stuff here. Well, I didn't use the micro module, the Ghost module for this review. I reviewed it on their FPV controller. This is also running Ghost. Obviously, this is the Ghost system. So the thing that I want to emphasize here in this video is if you're a new pilot, you've not been exposed to any sort of FPV tutorials, or you're just kind of getting started in your research and you want to get into becoming an FPV pilot, this is, I think, a way to go in terms of the ecosystem and the way that Orca has sort of integrated everything here. So there's a lot of vertical integration here, from the controller to the goggles to the VTX. Everything is very tightly integrated. And so the benefit here is that you're going to have a lot less time spending watching videos, learning about beta flight and VTXs and Edge TX and radios, all this stuff. If your goal is to just spend some money, obviously it's going to be a little bit more than perhaps the cheapest stuff that's out there. But if you're willing to spend some money and just get off and running, this is probably one of the fastest ways to do it. And probably, I think, in the long run, if your goal is to fly, you're going to probably enjoy it more. If your goal is to watch 10,000 hours of YouTube videos, learn all the intricacies of how a drone motor works or a flight controller works, then obviously this video is not going to be for you. You're going to probably want to watch a bunch of other videos from other content creators on, learning all that stuff, if that's your goal. But if that's not your goal and you want to fly and you want to spend more time flying, then this ecosystem has a lot of advantages, and we're going to talk about that here. So I'm going to primarily talk about the drone, but I just want to quickly just demonstrate here, if you happen to get this stuff, how easy it is to get up in the air. And literally, you can get up in the air in like 10-15 minutes, really. Just got to obviously charge up batteries and stuff like that. So obviously the drone is going to come pre-configured out of the box. Nothing you need to do in terms of setup. All your modes and your rates and everything is already set up in the drone. There is a bind button here on this over here is a combination VTX and receiver. It's a Ghost receiver. It's called the Immersion RC Ultimate Hybrid. And we'll talk about that. I'll talk about specs and everything later. But there's a bind button. It's kind of hard to see. It's right there. So what you're going to do is you're going to obviously turn on your radio. And then you're going to turn on the drone. You're going to press the bind button on the receiver. And then you're gonna put this into bind mode. And the way you do that is you do it via the app. So this is the thing about their integration, is they use everything in their system is tied into their app. So in this case, there's two of them. There's the FPV control app, and then there's a simulator app over here that's called FPV.SkyDive. And one of the benefits of going this route is if you do eventually want to learn how to fly this particular DreamX drone, that is in the simulator, and all of the characteristics of the way this flies is in the simulator. So you'll get a taste of how this flies in the simulator before you actually fly this. So one of the things you can do is you could just buy the controller, use the app, and they have a smartphone app. This is for Android. I think there's an iPhone one as well. Or you can download one for your PC through, I think, Steam. I think it's all the same. And that model is in there. And if you have this controller, I believe this model is free. Otherwise, if you're using some other controller, I believe there's a price to pay for, just like an add-on or something like that. I'm not exactly sure how much it costs, but I believe it's extra. But if you have this controller, then the model is going to be free. And so what you do is you launch this FPV.Control app, and I think I've already bound up, yeah, I've already bound up this controller, so click on that, and that's what it's called. Hit connect, hear beep from the controller. In order to put this into pairing mode, you're going to long press this B button here, and then you'll see some red lights. It'll be in pairing mode, and then you can see it here and pair it up. But once you're paired up, you can connect like this, and then hit done. And you're going to get this here. In order to bind, you're going to go into the ghost menu over here, and then you're just basically going to press the bind button, so power up the drone, press the bind button on the receiver. Obviously, you're going to have this already powered up and connected to the app, and you just hit the bind over here, hit start bind, and that's it. Then you're bound, and the modes are already built into the flight controller. You don't even have to connect to Betaflight whatsoever. In fact, that's what I did for my first flights, is I didn't even connect it to Betaflight. I just did the bind and went and flew it. Of course, I charged some batteries just to see what it's like straight out of the box without any tweaking whatsoever. So all your traditional controls here, in terms of mode 2, you got your throttle, your yaw, your pitch and roll, and then you got your antenna here. You're going to charge with this USB-C over here. So these buttons are the main buttons. So this one over here is a latching switch. You can arm with this switch here, and then this over here is like a reset button for the simulator. So you're not going to probably not going to use that. But these switches here are 3 position switches. I don't believe this is. I think this is used for the beeper. Over here is the angle mode, horizon mode, and acro mode switch. There's the 3 modes. And that's pretty much it in terms of getting it going. So all you need to do is, once you're bound, you charge up the battery. You're obviously going to put the battery in, plug it in, strap it in, and then obviously you want to open up these folding props. I don't think you necessarily have to, but you probably could or probably should, just make it a little bit quicker. They will unfold once the RPMs of the motor spin up quickly. And then to arm, you just press the arm button like that. It'll latch and then take off. And then of course these modes and everything are all the same in the simulator. So if you get the simulator and use this model, all the same modes are in there as well. So if you happen to learn on the simulator with the same buttons, all those will be in the drone itself as well. So there's really nothing to relearn there. You can just go and fly. Now, if you happen to get their goggles, the integration is going to be with the Immersion RC, the rapid fire. You can change the VTX, I guess, the channel through the app, and then you can then tune in to that channel from here. I'll just show you that really quickly. So you go into here, you go into video VTX or video transmitter, and here you can change your channel. So right now I'm on race band 1, but if you want race band 2, you can change that. There's all different bands as well, band D, B, etc. IRC. Let's go back to race band, and then the video transmitter does go, I believe, up to 1.5 watts. In this case, it goes to 1 watt on the in the app here. But so basically, you can set the channel, band, and power, and then I believe there's going to be a button here, because I don't have it powered on, but there'll be a button here where you send it to from the phone. And actually, what it does, it'll go, I believe, from the phone through the controller. And then once you're bound, it sends it from the controller to the receiver. And since this is a combination receiver VTX, then the VTX will change the channel there. So then once you've done that, you just power up your goggles. And I'm just using a third-party battery here. This doesn't come with a battery. So if you are watching this video and you're kind of going through these steps and you want some suggestions on a battery, let me know in the comments below and I'll help you out. But this is just some old third-party battery they have. Uses a barrel connector, like this, pretty standard Fat Shark battery. You can power up your goggles with this button here, and then you'll see your rapid fire boot up here, and then you just use this little jog dial here to change your channels and bands. So you can see here, if you hit the right, go right and left, that changes the band, and then up and down changes the channel number. So So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. in that band. And if you want a different band, you just go right and left. It's very, very simple. Then you'll have video. Of course, once you tune to the same one that you have requested through the app, at that point, you can go fly. So that, as you can see, obviously took a little bit more time for me to sort of do a little tutorial here, but you can get up and flying in 10 minutes. Obviously, if you've never flown before, you don't want to do that. I would highly recommend getting that simulator, put some time in the simulator before you take this out and actually fly it, and get really, really comfortable with this model in the simulator. And then I think you'll feel more confident when going out and flying this for the first time. Obviously, you want to take precautions and, be in an open area, away from people for your first flight. But if you want to get going quickly, you don't want to learn anything about Betaflight, you don't want to watch, thousands of hours of YouTube videos, just do what I did here and you're up and flying. It's really that simple. And that's kind of the integration that Orca offers here in the ecosystem that you don't get with, your cheap bind and fly system you have out there. You may run into issues. There's obviously things are going to be bound up out of the box on laser ready to flies, but then, what do you do after if you want to go to the next drone or want to get beyond a certain point? You didn't have to invest a lot of time learning about that, so the DIY ecosystem, which has benefits, pros and cons, of course, compared to this one. But I think the biggest drawback of that is it's going to require more of your time. So if time is a commodity that you value highly, then something like this, while it's going to cost you more, I think is worth it for those of you that value time over money. Okay, so with that out of the way, I will have a separate video on just this controller. So for you that are just starting out and you're like, well, I want to maybe just buy the controller and then see what I can do with that, I will have another video out here, using the simulator. I'll show you how to get the simulator running. The pros and cons of this one. I'll have a whole video on this one at some point down the road, pretty soon. And then we'll have another video on these goggles. Now, these goggles have been out for a couple of years already, and just never got around to even requesting to review it. I've been just using the Sky Zones, with O4Xs. I've been using those forever. And I'm going to have a video on this, comparing this goggle to the O4X some point pretty soon. If you guys have any specific questions about that kind of comparison, maybe you're considering this or the Sky Zone, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try and address that in the video that I'll make. I'm not going to cover the goggles. This has been highly reviewed already. Bottom line is, I think, well, in terms of like a quick overview of this goggle, just based on using it for about a week or so, it's a really nice goggle. It's pretty expensive. The build quality of this is probably top notch in the FPV industry. So there's no doubt understanding why this has been one of the most popular FPV goggles that most FPV pilots use. I already kind of knew that before I even saw these. I do have some issues personally, like in terms of like how it fits on my face, etc. I will talk about that in that video down the road. Okay, so put this to the side. Yes, we will get to this drone here. As I said, I already have a video on the Ghost system, the receiver, and then the rapid fire. I will link those down in the video description. So let's talk about the drone now. They did send this last thing here. I didn't use this either, but this is the Bluetooth module for JRB radios. So if you have like a traditional OpenTX radio and you want to use like those app features that I showed you through this radio, the Bluetooth module that's in here is replicated in this. So you could use, if you don't want to use this radio and you want to use this and say like Radio Master, or a Jumper, you could do that and have that same sort of integration with their app and stuff. If that interests you, I'm not sure how many people that will interest. Let me know, because most people that are using those other radios are already highly invested in the traditional DIY approach. They've already spent hours learning about Betaflight and Edge TX, and so I'm not sure how much benefit this particular part has for those pilots. But if you happen to be one of those people, maybe I'm mistaken, do let me know down in the comments. And if this requires a review, then I will obviously give it its fair attention, because, you know, if there's people out there that want to know, then of course I'll have to address that. But if that's not the case, then if I don't hear anything, then of course I won't look at that again. So let's talk about the drone now. And it's a beautiful 5-inch quad. It's expensive. It's pretty expensive. It's made in Europe. They're based in Croatia, I believe. So, you know, obviously, if you want something cheaper, you probably have to get something built in China. That's kind of a given. This is, you know, made kind of, you know, with a lot of sort of handcrafted attention to detail. The frame itself, not particularly interesting. Yeah, there's some different curves and little different lines. You know, it's got its own unique design and style. But this sort of approach, it's been around for years. There's nothing particularly special about this frame. I will point out a few things here. This bottom deck it goes all the way across. The hardware is very nice in terms of the screws and stuff. So they have these 4 screws here that hold the main arms in place, as well as the center screw here. There's like a brace piece inside here. So if you do happen to break an arm, and the arms are I think like maybe $10, something like that, and they're really thick. They're 6 millimeters thick. So this is they've designed this for the people that want to do bando bashing, basically. For if you want a tank, this frame should break in the right places, and you should be able to replace these arms, which will be cheap, versus parts on the inside here. So I believe fundamentally the frame has all the right design cues for a properly built, durable frame. The edge here I thought was a little bit small, but I think, you know, some people approach this by putting like big, like sticky pointy things out here to give it more things to break off. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it kind of depends on what you want to go for. They said that this is obviously 6 millimeter carbon. It will hold up over time. And of course, if it gets frayed a little bit too much, just swap out the arm. It's very easy to do. Just 2 screws, and then the arm will come out. Obviously, you'll have to unscrew the motor, put that back on. I don't like these little motor wire things here, because when the arm breaks, you got to take this off, and then it's kind of a hassle getting it back on, because you have to put new adhesive on. So I just don't like those in general. They have countersunk screws here, I think, or they've bored out the carbon where these screws go into the motor. So while the arm is pretty thick, it's thinner where the screws are. So there is a chance in a really hard crash that these will probably might get pulled through the carbon. I'm not sure how thick it is. My guess it's about half, like 3 millimeters. Not sure if that's enough based on how hard you crash. So, you know, the only way I'll know is if I actually fly it into a wall at full speed at 150 miles an hour, which of course I'm not going to do, because that just would be kind of pointless, because it doesn't prove anything. It's just one crash. You'd have to, if you gave me 100 of these exactly the same, and I did the same crash, like the same, I flew it into the wall the same way 100 times, and then I could show you the data on what happened here. Then I could say something. Otherwise, one crash doesn't really mean anything. It's too small of a sample size. All right, so the motor, it's a really, really nice motor. It reminds me of like the iFlight Zing 2. I'm not sure who makes it, but you know, I'll put all the important specs here on the motor. It's a 2207, 1900 kV, a little high on the kV side, but pretty standard these days for a 6S. This is obviously a 6S setup. You'll need a 6S battery. I'll link some batteries down in the video description if you want to pick some up. So yeah, you know, they're using these folding, I forget they call these a gem fan floppy floppies or something like that. The folding props. Not my for a 5-inch for a freestyler, I would go with a standard prop. If you're just using it for like long range cruising, folding prop is fine. I feel like you're gonna get more vibration issues on the long run with the folding prop. And on my particular setup, obviously this is like pre-production review samples. They only have the props that they gave me here, and interestingly, they have the one red one and 3 black ones. Obviously, their whole, if you can look at their box, everything is their color theme is red and black, so that's why they went with this sort of setup here. Obviously, instead of just one, instead of, I know they could have gone with the red and red, but whatever. And yeah, that's the only thing that out of the whole thing, out of this whole design here, the one thing is the props might bother some people, especially if you're going to be doing a lot of freestyle. But, you know, you're going to be buying more props anyway, and you're going to probably experiment with other props at some point. It's fine if you're starting out. No problems there. Okay, so the stack here is a 20 by 20. So it's a 20 by 20 flight controller, F722. These are made by Orca, by the way. These are not sourced from other companies. You got a USB-C port there. The ESCs, it's a 20 by 20, but it's a 60 amp. It's using BL32 firmware, but it's the latest version before they went under. It's like 32 by 32.10. Didn't have any issues with ESCs. The VTX combo back here is made by Immersion RC. It's called the Ultimate, the Ghost Ultimate, or something like that. I'm so bad with the names. Put it up here on the screen here. Basically, it's a combination VTX and Ghost receiver, and it's got all the standard Ghost protocol stuff in there, all the different update packet rates, all that kind of stuff. It's basically a standard Ghost receiver. And then the VTX does go from 25 milliwatts to 1.5 watts max power, so you shouldn't have any issues with power. Now, they did put the receiver antenna here with this little rubber band here. And I can tell you right now that these rubber bands, they do dry out over time. So you want to keep an eye on this. At some point in the future, this will break, and then I don't know what will happen to this antenna. Most likely it'll get caught up in the props and get chopped off. So I don't know. I mean, you can see here that I can easily move it here. I might want to secure it here with some string or dental floss as well, just for some additional security, because this rubber band here, while it's nice in terms of like getting installed, after you fly this for a while, this will dry out and the rubber bands do break. Yeah, in fact, I can already feel it kind of drying out a little bit. So just be aware, it'll happen at some point, so you want to keep an eye on that. Got your VTX antenna back here. I'm not really sure who makes this. I think it might. Some of the stuff like I believe the antenna and the camera are. I think the antenna is made by Foxeer, but it's rebranded Orca, and they're using a short one, of course, because for freestylers crashing a lot, you don't want an antenna flopping around out here, breaking off, etc. They could have gone with one with like an SMA connector. I don't know, little things here. Got your XT60 connector back here, and there is a big capacitor there. I'm not sure what it's rated to. I believe it's 35 volts. And then this little plate here is where this XT connector is bolted into, and then this thing here bolts into the top plate over here. So you can see there's 2 different plates there. And then, yeah, it's pretty easy to get your battery connector in and out of here. I use the R-Line 1200 6S, so that's their battery range is like 1,000 to 1,500, pretty wide range. I didn't try every single battery in that range, but I did try. I also tried a 6S 1300, and they flew the same. The pid tune felt the same on both of those. The weights were only about 10 grams difference. So, obviously, if you exceed 1,500 milliamp hours and it's pretty heavy, your flight experience might be different, so just be aware that you probably want to stick within that range. And this is the camera. This is a Foxeer toothless camera, but they've obviously rebranded it Orca. I think I've reviewed this camera as well. It's a great camera. No problems there. Nice GoPro mount here. They've got extra hardware. You can't really see. You got this screw, and then you got this, I don't know what this is called, some sort of a grommet or something here. It's metal, and it makes the base a little bit wider so if you crash, the GoPro is not going to this whole mount's not going to get ripped off. Sometimes with these TP mounts, with a screw here, if you don't have a really wide head, the screw will get pulled through and the mount will fly off. So this is nice little hardware here. Good touch there. I don't like the foam pad here. you do have to cinch down the battery pretty tight, because otherwise it will slide around if you don't have it tight enough. Most other manufacturers are using like that grip stuff that you've seen, you know, that OMAGod invented. They are not using that. I wish they would have used that though, but they have a lot of big cutouts here. So they do have, you know, I see they ran the battery strap like this, so the battery does kind of grip here a little bit, but it's just not enough, you know, unless you really grip down the battery. That potentially is an issue. If you crash really hard, I do see batteries being more likely to be ejected versus using the grip stuff. So minor thing here. Obviously, it's very easy to just rip this off and put your own grip on there. You know, that stuff is pretty inexpensive. So if you're really concerned about that, it's pretty easy to swap that out. Okay, so I am going to just show you the full, well, this is not one of the first flights. This is, I did some tweaking to the rates on this. So the first few flights I had on this, I did not enjoy the rates. This is my personal subjective opinion. Some people like faster rates. I personally do not. So I swapped the stock rates that were in here out of the factory with my own personal rates that I like, that most people hate. So I'm not going to show you those. I've shared my personal rates to other people, and they're like, "Well, those suck." I'm like, "Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing those." So I think most people will like the rates that are in here because most people like to be really snappy. I personally do not. So I don't necessarily think that you should switch the rates. You should probably just fly it as is and maybe just get used to it. But I didn't like it, so I swapped the rates out. So after I flew it a few times, I did try to get used to it. I just didn't like it. So I did plug it into Betaflight and change the rates. You can also change the rates in the OSD as well. That's pretty simple to do. So if you don't want to plug into a Betaflight, you can do it via the OSD as well if you want to swap your rates out to something else. But I just wanted to show you one complete flight here. I'm going to be talking about how it flies, and you'll hear the audio from the drone, the prop sounds, etc. I'm going to end the video with that, and you can just watch that whole thing, and you'll have an idea of how it flies and what my feelings are while I'm flying. But this is not one of the first flights. I think this is maybe like the 5th or 6th flight that I've flown in this one after I sort of tweaked it a little bit, and it'll give you a good idea of how it's going to fly. The PIDs are really good. They did a really nice job out of the factory. Really, there's not much to complain about other than I noted a few things already in the video. Go back and watch it if you missed it. But the out-of-the-box experience in this one, if you are looking at something where you just want to go and plug in some, charge some batteries, plug it in and go fly, this is probably one of the quickest ways to do that. With obviously it's not all pre-bound. It would be nice if they did have like this as a package where you can just buy it all at once, but obviously not everyone wants to do it that way. You can, maybe they will at some point, but you can buy all these parts separately or individually. Or if you don't like this controller, you can try something else. You don't like that goggle, you can try something else. It's flexible. But the point I was trying to make at the beginning, and again throughout this video, is that this is their ecosystem. So if you've already are a seasoned FPV pilot, you may now want to reinvest in this ecosystem because you're kind of relearning stuff. It's a different way of doing things, and I'm not necessarily promoting that you do that for those particular people. I think that people that haven't invested any time or money in an ecosystem yet, if you go this route, it's going to be a really quick way of getting up and running. So that's all I got to say. Here is that flight footage and narration. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below, and I'll talk to you guys in the next one. All right, so doing this flight so you guys can hear what it sounds like. I've already flown this a few times already. And one of the things I did was I changed the rates. The rates are pretty high out of the box. You can hear it sounds super smooth, even with the folding propellers. Very floaty. I think the idle is pretty high. No jitters or oscillations. The pitch tune's really good on this one. You're gonna need some good batteries. I'm flying this with a Tattoo R-Line version 5 6S 1200 milliamp hour. I think the voltage range or the battery capacity for this pitch tune is like 1000 to 1500, so pretty wide range. I have flown it with a 1300 as well, but I think this 12 to 1300 is a good balance of weight and performance. Full throttle. Oh, way down, way far away. So pretty fast. Can be fast, but I mean, there's obviously things that are faster. I'm already really killing the battery. Yeah, you can hear the voltage sag already. So these 2207 motors are pretty high kV. 2207s aren't generally that efficient, so if you want a longer flight, maybe not going to be doing as aggressive flying, go with maybe like a 1500 to get a little extra flight time. I'm not going to get the longest flight on here, but this flight is mainly just to show you what it sounds like. It's for audio purposes. That's why I'm flying in the middle of the field and flying around myself so you can hear it. Yeah, it's very nicely tuned and pretty good control, so. And the power loops are really smooth. All right, on to the next flight.